There we go. Here comes Joey. I think we're live. We're a little bit late today, but that's just how things go. Let's see if I can bring Joey in here. What's up, dog?
Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah. Holla. Well, Neil has a ton of news, none of which he can talk about. So just know that many things are going on in his world. What else do you guys have going on? Joe, anything going on for you?
Ton of news, nothing I can talk about.
Okay, great.
Well, I'll rack my brain for something maybe I can share, but yeah, we're keeping busy.
Okay, cool. Well, I can talk a little bit about some stuff that I've been doing today. I put in those parking sensors, wrestled with those things all week, and they were in my little windowsill, but are no longer there because they're installed in the street now. So
were they surface mount in the end, or were they?
Yeah, the two I installed are surface mounted. There's one that is an under surface mount, but I'm trying to think of where to put it, and I'm not sure about it. Just because it's A, it's a lot more work, and B, like I'm not sure where it's going to be in the long term, and so I kind of worry about, do I put it? And I worry a little. I mean, not that I should worry a little bit about privacy. Like I could put it in my driveway, which would then be fun for like automations around the house. Running it through I think MQTT, so that when the car pulls up, some lights turn on or whatever, ACD music blares, etc. But I also think I want to make the whole dashboard public, and I don't really want people knowing like when I'm here and not here.
It's probably not a bad idea.
So, yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking there.
I mean, I want to hear what the experience was like with these devices, like how much they cost. What was it like interfacing with a generally B2B company to get these things in your hands? Like,
sure.
What?
They sell a demo kit. I don't think I'm under NDA for their costs. And if I am, it's a fucking stupid thing. So they sell a demo kit and you get 3 sensors. So 2 above ground and 1 in ground. And then a, see if I can turn the lights on here. Yeah, cool. Yeah, 2 above ground, 1 in ground. And then you get this little thing, which you put into your car. And I don't know if I can focus. And that tells it that basically is like I think of it as a get out of jail free card. I'm sure that's not how they would call it, but it means that like when I'm parked in the space, you can just set some different triggers. It's like, hey, if there's a car parked here with this thing, don't take a picture of it and send it to the city. Just leave them alone.
What is that?
Cool.
That'd probably be like NFID or something, wouldn't it? Can you copy that with a flipper?
You might be able to. It's iPermit 2.1 Fleximoto.
Break it open.
Yeah, I probably should.
Yeah, I'll be exploring that with a flipper for sure. See what you can get off it.
Yeah. Maybe I'll see if I can enlist the help of some of the mysterious group known only as Apple fuckers to get into that. Yeah, and I think all of that was shipping was $600. So I look at it like if I was going to quote the city. So if they discover it and I get super lucky and they're like, hey, this is cool, and they don't say, hey, you need to pull these things out and we're going to charge you, and they're like, hey, this is cool, how much would it cost? I think at scale, I'm guessing it's like $100 to $200 a sensor is my guess.
At scale.
Yeah, probably. And like they have something where if you sign up as a customer, you get access to their pricing and it shows you what the pricing is. I don't remember what it is, but I think that's like, I mean, for LoRa in general, that's probably a decent for kind of sensors that work consistently and aren't going to break after 6 months or whatever.
Not to mention like parking sensors, you're going to be doing scale. Like there's no deployment where you do 1 or 2 short of like understanding your shop. You're doing city blocks.
Yeah.
Parking garages, you could tell people where to actually park in the garage, what floor to go to has the most spaces and stuff. I've thought about that one loads. It's a great use case. It's just, I think scale needs to be a little bit cheaper.
I have on-street parking at my current place, and it drives me nuts because it's a one-way street. I have to go all the way down the street to my place and then figure out what's going on and then back up if there's no spots. And I just want like a little one-pager app that would tell me where I could park.
Yeah, and I mean, clearly that's kind of the best use. Like the use case that I'm using it for, I think I think we've talked about here where you take pictures of cars that are parked too long in the 15-minute zone outside of the shop. I think you can do that with just an AI camera anyway, which is kind of probably what a couple of you guys said. I'm like, no, well, that's not the way I want to do it. Like 𝗪𝗏𝗀𝐿 like that. I don't want that.
Well, like these parking sensors are a different use case too. Like you've got a pretty long battery life on something like this. You don't have to have the cord of a camera.
Yeah.
And then that little tab that you have, that's like a really cool unlock too. So like if you're a corporate parking lot or something, you throw one of those to everyone that's an employee, they get a green path, like, they're allowed, and then you immediately know whose car is not supposed to be there. And that's great.
Yeah, I think there's a ton of
security standpoint.
There's but like a ton of super cool things that you can do with it. I mean, even for a little business like mine, I mean, man, if we could get to the point where, like I was thinking yesterday, we had a guy park at 3 o'clock. Like, this is so petty. It's funny. We had a guy park at 3 o'clock, and it's 15-minute parking from, like, I don't know, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. So he parks at 3:10, and I know that because I installed the sensor earlier, and I can now fucking tell how long he's parked there. And he didn't move until 6, and then he's parked there for the night. Like, after 6, who cares? Because the shop is closed, and it's overnight parking is fine. He's a neighbor. He's a nice guy. I've talked to him. But at the same time, that's taken up a space in front of our store. And so I think there's some stuff where as a small business, what might be cool is to use, do you remember those busy lights that I had? It's actually the one behind me I can turn on and off. Is some form of that just shows if the parking, so we have another parking spot in the back that normally if Lee or I was working there, we park in that spot. So it says Paleo Treats parking on it, but typically we just use it for our own parking. But if the stuff in front is full, I could have a busy light outside that is like green, that the parking spot in the back is good. And it seems like that's like a silly thing, but that's one of the big complaints of the customers. And if every customer that doesn't come in, we miss out on selling them a $58 cake, which is what a lot of people buy. And I'm sure some of you will be like, oh my God, $58 for a cake. Like, yeah, it's specialty food. Suck it. That's a lot of money.
I know how good those cakes can taste.
Yeah.
I've not yet tried the Paleo Treats. I got to get myself down there, but
oh yeah. Well, we should get a box up to you.
Yeah. I got to go in person. Got to get it fresh. Yeah.
Yeah. Come on down. Let's see. I'm behind on the chat. Derek was asking, is the company that makes them already implementing and have various use cases? Yeah, I think these guys are already pretty big over in Europe. They're out of Slovakia, and it's 𝗪𝗏𝑚oto. I think probably 𝗪𝗏𝑚oto.com, and I think the parent company is �GoSpace.tech, something like that. But yeah, I think like here's the thing with this IoT stuff is that it's already being used. It's just like I'm discovering it for the first time because I'm new to it. But it's not like I'm inventing this stuff. It's like, oh, this has been done for years. So
yeah, but
it's years, but like so subtly years. These people are probably talking to a handful of folks at some government level a year, right? Like the unlock on the Helium side is folks like you, and then everyone else is going to watch this and be like, wow, I need to deploy these. Like it's parking sensors are an awesome use case for Helium because it's urban and it needs that density and all of the other fun stuff.
Yeah. Oh, I hadn't thought about that because there is that like intersection point where Helium is like kind of hits the sweet spot with LoRaWAN, and specifically Helium where there's just coverage pretty much everywhere in an urban area now.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, Neil, your HIP went live. Is that right?
Really heavily debated one in the last couple of days.
And that was like the first 14 to witness, get paid for it, something like that.
Yes, yeah, exactly. The fastest to witness, and from it in density. If you're outside of density, then nothing changes. But in density, we start scoring the hotspots and how fast they are.
Yep. And then I saw that Coinbase was paying close attention to what you did, and they decided that because of that HIP, they would list HNT. So that was congratulations, market mover.
Yeah, I think Max was a little frustrated with how offensive Reddit was being, so he decided to put that out there to.
Oh, did he? Yeah,
he said we were aligned.
Yeah, he called me. He's like, "Hey, Neil's hip went through and it changed the price of HNT," because he knows I don't pay attention to that stuff and I'm gullible. I'm like, "Wow, fucking Neil's a crusher," and he's like, "No, Coinbase listed it. Come on, dude."
No, it's been a fun process. I mean, just because it was HIP 83, like overall, more people are getting involved in governance. More people are giving strong opinions, getting involved, voting. It was the first time we've seen like last minute voting as well.
Yeah,
So
and
like this
big
issue was
last minute voting,
contentious.
right?
Yeah, this issue was contentious. A lot of people think that was me. I'm the biggest voter in that hit, but I'm really not. I wish I was. I wish I had that kind of cash floating around. Yeah, that'd be great, but it wasn't. So, you know, can I elaborate on the hit that passed? Yeah. So I was just reading the chat there.
Yeah, tell me what happened.
So the problem is right now is that we can't every hotspot beacons, so we can't tell density to stop beaconing less. So the problem is there's so many in density beaconing that they're just sucking up rewards for people putting unique coverage up there. And there's a lot of hotspots that, you know, if I go and put a hotspot in the middle of London on the best connection, up high on the highest tower, with the old system of the lottery, I would have just as much chance as someone popping one on the windowsill with a good view. There was no reason for me to move from the windowsill to the antenna either. Yep. So there was like it was kind of like universal basic income for hotspots. That's what the POC system was like under the lottery. As long as you were doing something, you had just as much chance of everyone else. But it's causing issues, and it's caused overdensity. And originally, the system was designed to be first to witness. But when we had syncing on hotspots, it was nearly impossible to stay synced to the tip of the chain to submit the witness. So this lottery idea was put into place that gave everyone a 20-minute window to submit a witness report. When it was moved off chain, that window was cut down to like 3 minutes, I think it was, but it was still the lottery system. So the big thing under the lottery ticket is I could put lots of hotspots in one place and have lots of tickets. And there was a type of game in packet stuffing that is always slower, where they were just stuffing and saying because they've got so long to submit, they just put lots of tickets in for the lottery.
Yep.
First to witness kind of cuts that out on a basic level. It doesn't stop all gaming, and that wasn't what we were after, like totally. Right. But it's just one of the nice side effects of basic packing stuffing. It's been stopped. And like for me, because I've been around for so long, like I remember the day when they switched this on to random and how bad it affected the network from my point of view. So I remember the system before, but for a lot of people, it's the only thing they remembered. And one thing I've really loved about the HIP chat room is it's got people really interested in optimizing their hotspots again, making sure they're on the fastest connection, as connected as they can be, looking into the firmware to see if it's slow. Because you have to remember what's fast for POC will also be fast for data. So they're really putting in extra effort just to see what optimizations they can drive. And it's great seeing that kind of like, it's not just a lottery where more effort in doesn't equal results out. There's real effort in doing it. So it's great to see.
So hopefully that helps, Derek. Fucking A, Neil. And I think that's something to be kind of proud of, that you pushed that thing and got that thing through. And I think, you know, even whether it's right or wrong, and knowing you, it's probably right and best for the network. Like Max, you're right most of the time. So it's like, whenever you or Max say something, I'm like, you know, those guys don't just say shit to like run their sucks. They usually have.
No,
Yeah,
and I think like, you know, we knew it wasn't the perfect solution. I will admit right now, you know, a cutoff time is the best solution. But we understand the technical limitations of to have a cutoff time that we can use. We have to trust the hotspots to have an accurate time and not be changed by the user. So it's not something we can use very well at this stage. I'm not saying in the future we might devise a better way, but we have an iterative change to the network that improves the system until a better system can be replaced. Yep.
Dig it, dude. Dig it. Yeah, so that's cool. I think it's nice to see. I always thought that was one of the most fun parts of Helium was optimizing your hotspot and doing it in ways that were like good for the network. I don't know. It wasn't.
I miss consensus. Do you remember that?
Oh my god!
When we used to optimize heavily for PUP coverage, so you would then be put into the lottery for consensus.
Yeah.
You properly set your hotspots up as well as you could to make sure it never missed an event, just so it got that good score. And it's that competitiveness that drove it to be a really big thing, I think, because you were really well rewarded for it. And one of the downsides to this HIP is, yes, there are some slower hotspots. Yes, there are some slower setups. But the hotspots that are doing the work and would likely serve data are now earning generally more for what they're doing. So there's more reason for them to keep them on in the long run. And that's essential. We could use some thinning out in city centres in favour of unique coverage. Yes, this is one way of scoring it, but it's not the only way. So there'll be more HIPs to follow for sure.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah. I like seeing people stepping forward and kind of figuring out the governance thing. I do think we need to clean up some governance stuff, which Max and I have been working on for Helium, kind of going back and forth with how that gets started, but just making sure that the HIP process, that you get some help, right? For you, Neil, you've written a bunch of HIPs. Max has written a bunch of HIPs. Like, it's pretty straightforward. You know how to use GitHub. You know how to copy the thing and do all this stuff. And Helium, Joey, to probably your credit and maybe Sam's, has really cleaned up that documentation process and made it much easier to kind of actually do it. It used to be that you had to know how to use GitHub, and now, like, if you can just follow directions, you're probably going to be okay. So
on the user side, I think we're moving towards something that's not realms too for voting and all of that, which is probably a relief to anyone that has voted.
Yeah. Yep. I think the other thing that we're starting to see as well, and I've talked about this on the show before, is there's starting to be a movement, and this is a giant thing, to, there's a little bit of a different topic, drop IoT and mobile and go back to HNT only. And I think both on the surface and at the depths to which I've kind of looked into that, that's probably a good idea. Actually, no, it is a good idea. It's a giant amount of work, and I think it's going to take a lot to do. But certainly in terms of making the system simple for the the everyday person to understand, who's not a LoRaWAN geek, who's not a nerd, who's not way into this stuff, like they just want to deploy a hotspot, contribute and earn some token, going back to HNT, so we don't have to say, like, well, you're in mobile for this and you're in IoT for that, and you take your IoT and you change it for HNT, and then you take your HNT and you get DC, and then you use DC, and just like, just fucking make it two things. So
yeah, there's a lot to it for sure. And I mean, one of the things is, how will the people of the network and the people watching the network look at that, and how will they react to that, right? It would be almost admitting failure when there wasn't really failure. It's just it wasn't the right fit, and we would know it as an iteration, but some people will see that as a real negative, that it went wrong. So switching back, whilst I understand some of it, would be very complex.
Super complex. It's gonna take some work to message that out, and to explain it, really. But I think the other thing, the alternate storyline there is that, look, a lot of projects will take something and they do something because it's innovative, and then they just fucking ride it right off the cliff because they're like, nope, this is what we're doing. This is what we said we're going to do. We're going to do it all the way, even if it's wrong. Like, we want to do this innovative thing. And I think the story can be told that Helium is, truly this unique project in that it's really big, but it's also nimble enough that it can, if it sees something that is not right, through community efforts, through the efforts of the Helium Foundation, through the efforts of kind of everyone, all the vested players in the community, can make these changes far faster than an equivalent size kind of corporation could. So pretty interesting stuff there.
I see it from both sides. Like 83 for me, we stuck to our guns the whole way through it. There was other suggestions, but it wasn't that we didn't take them to heart. It's just we were so sure this was the only way to be done. And every time we were presented data, it pointed to this still being the best way for it. But it can be seen by certain people, and it's been commented that we didn't change our minds. And it comes both ways. I think the process can be improved. I've noted some points down about the HIP process the last couple of days to people. I think, we need many authors to a HIP. And I also think it's so important that any PR changes are noted in the HIP rooms, so we can instantly see, oh, look, they've changed this paragraph, or this idea's come out. It's like people say with 83 that the someone bought the network for $10,000, I think was a Reddit title, but that just says that not enough people are in voting in the governance. It doesn't say that, someone bought the vote. It just says not enough people participated. So I think a big part of the HIT process is we need to bring utility to the IoT coin with staking, so they have a real reason to do it, to get involved.
Yeah.
And that's part of the HIT process we're going to have to look at.
Yeah. Liam Edwards, POC is fake data, beacons and witnesses. If someone is passing real data, it would show up on places like Helium Geek as data. Oh, that's an interesting way to think of it, right? Like, I think that's a little bit, what do they say when you're explaining something for marketing is like simplify, then exaggerate. It's like, I think that's where we are with that one, Liam. Is that I wouldn't call it fake data, although that's a useful way to think about it. It is data that's signaling that there's network coverage there. So,
yeah,
Joey, what do you got?
Or could be. I don't know. It's an interesting take.
Yeah.
I think you nailed it with your.
I just heard that the other day. I was like, that's exactly what happens most of the time, and you just got to be really careful, because that is the most useful way of conveying information, not to exaggerate in ways that are, I don't know, like distortional or too distortional. Cool. Let's see. WTV. Oh, it was a reply to a comment above. Okay, so I can see you guys are banging on in the chat. Right on. And then I think this latency thing is the problem, and I think I've got the outlier case, me and 619 and anyone else who put effort into off-grids that are kind of truly off-grid and are not just on towers on mountains. So I think there's, what do you got, Joey?
Well, I mean, you are in a particularly interesting case because you did the swarm key. You have the swarm key.
Yep, for the DIYs, yep.
And so your ECC chip doesn't have to sign those packets, so you immediately gain an advantage on packet delivery time.
Yes.
Which is only in the case, this is where proof of coverage and data transfer are a little different. Those proof of coverage messages get signed, the data just gets passed through directly. And so it gets a little funny between the two classes of data transfer.
Yeah, I think that the advantage of having, and this will be confusing, especially for Derek and folks who are new to the network, this whole DIY thing, like we'll just take a short detour there, is that in September, October of 2020, right when Neil and I joined the Helium network, I don't know if you were before or after that, Joey.
Oh, I was here.
Yeah,
I was here before you.
Yeah, good. Yeah, there's got to be someone here before me because I didn't come into it that early. Funnily enough, Travis Teague, who's on this as 𝗚𝗵𝘁, was put in charge by Helium Inc. at the time of running this DIY program. And it was an investigation by kind of Helium Inc. into the idea, because there's a gateway shortage, and at that time Helium was the only company making Helium hotspots. This was before HIP-19. They're like, hey, could we make it so that people could just buy off-the-shelf equipment and build their own, and could we trust those hotspots? And they handed out licenses so that you could build your own hotspot for about, I think, 600 or 700 DIY hotspots. And that turned out to be a really good learning experience for Helium. You basically can't trust people to do that because a lot of people ended up fucking over the network using that thing, and kind of really, in many cases, we're good about it and saying like, hey, there's an exploit that you can run here. But in some cases, we're not good about it and just ran the exploit without telling anybody and racked up H&T for doing nothing. So that program was very quickly shut down within about a month and a half, 2 months. And poor Travis was overwhelmed with requests for more DIY hotspots. But it confuses people because they'll hear about it, be like, how do I get one? Like, oh, you can't. That was just open and closed, and that's it. But
it's also the rack V ones.
Oh, the rack V. So, I mean, you could. So I think from the DIY program, and maybe it was before that, Joey, maybe you have a better memory of this than I do, or an earlier memory, is it seemed to me like from the DIY, there was this realization that you could crack open other hotspots and make them basically split out the packet forwarder and the miner, which was really like the key to the DIY piece. And then you could perform some fuckery if you were so inclined. Is that right?
Oh, Not just that. You could get optimizations from doing that as well. I think that was a big part of it.
Yeah.
Once you cracked one and understood how it worked, you could improve it, not just game it.
Yep. Oh, Travis is saying it's much less. Maybe it was less than 600 or 700. Huh. I thought it was, 600, 700. So, yeah, maybe way less. I know that Travis was overwhelmed by it. Not overwhelmed. It was just
like
Yeah.
200 DMs a day or something, wasn't he getting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was,
Crazy.
I mean, 150 of them were from me. Like, hey, man.
Yep, me too.
How's it going? Yeah, so that was that whole thing, and that allowed you to do what Joey talked about earlier, which is to have basically a faster hotspot. Is it Travis? Is this fake news? I want to make sure I get this right. I'll put this on the broadcast so that we know it, because Travis is the one who ran the whole thing. So yeah, if you want to drop the actual number, Travis, if that's okay, drop it. Let me know. I don't want to be I don't want to be accused of putting out fake news. Yeah, so that's where we are. So what allowed, I think, people to do is to experiment with putting the packet forwarder side out on a mountain, which is what I did. And that allowed you to run a much smaller solar panel, a much smaller battery, to have a really small, at the time, cellular data plan, which has all been kind of made, redundant or unnecessary, because now all hotspots are doing the same thing that hotspot was doing. Then all hotspots are now packet forwarders. So there's
lower power requirements, just no syncing, no SD card replacements. Very rare that we get firmware update. Just where it should have always been. But
yeah.
A while to get there.
Oh, you gotta go, Joe. All right.
So I'm gonna drop.
Wait, thanks, buddy. Thanks,
happy Friday.
Yeah, shit, yeah. Let's see. So there goes Joe. So I think, Neil, where I was going with that was that it comes back to this thing that you just passed, is that for me, the speed of the hotspot and just sending the data straight through and having that advantage there is offset by the latency that comes in from the cell modem that is required to get the information back to basically the internet.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people that are already in this place. They are set up perfectly. They've got these Ethernet cables, they put the effort in. But there are a bunch, and it's never about one hotspot, it's about generalizations, right?
Yep.
But there's a bunch that are just on Wi-Fi and people's, windowsills that have got an ISP router and a router themselves, and it's double routed through the thing. And it's a horrible situation to be for a sensor that wants to use that. And POC wasn't aligned with what data needs. Like, POC has two jobs. One, spread coverage, but two, make sure that coverage is right for data.
Yep.
And yeah, not all use cases need instant data. Like on Reddit, the second I posted that story about the seaweed farmers tracking buoys, I had people comment on it going, "Oh, I bet that sensor doesn't need to be fast." Well, no, it doesn't. But think about a world where Class C devices are running, and 3 seconds could be the difference between something going very wrong and not.
Yep.
It matters. Speed matters. And one big thing we don't have that competitors have is an SLA on this network. So if we're not going to have an SLA, we have to make sure it's redundant and fast.
Yep.
It's just as simple as that.
Yep. So SLA, for folks watching, service level agreement, that's like the standard thing that says, hey, you can rely on this network, because we promise to keep it up, and if a hotspot goes down, we'll put it back up. There's nothing like that on this network. Like the really cool thing is that there's an incentive that if the hotspot goes down, someone else puts a hotspot in there, but it's not like a fast incentive. So unless you're the one running data, you could be waiting a week or 2 weeks or 2 months for someone else to kind of notice that and deploy a hotspot against it. So
yeah, and it's just that kind of like, don't deploy. Not all, and the thing is as well, not all 4G is bad. People keep saying 4G is bad on here. A lot of 4G it can be fast, very fast. Like we've seen winners even today saying, "Wow, my 4G is up." So it's not about, generally it's always about the connection. It's just how well it's set up compared to others. So. But yeah, like 4G will not be affected outside of density. The second there are less than 14, where 4G makes the most sense, right? Remote coverage, you might only have 2 or 3 in range, or 1 in range in some cases. Where 4G makes most sense, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If it's a little slower, and yes, in the worst case, it could be 3 seconds slower, but it would still get through. So this doesn't harm the network where you need those technologies the most. It just says, look, there's too many hotspots here. And in reality, if there are always 14 faster than you in range, then the sensors are likely to pick that. So what's the point of paying these people a basic income for just being in the right area and putting a little effort in?
Yeah.
It's a tough situation. So
no, I mean, it always comes down to like, how do we set up the incentives so they're aligned to build the best network like that's it, kind of full stop. And whether that's GeoNet and the staking stuff that we're talking about over there, or it's Helium, or it's whatever, HiveMapper, Demo, etc. Like that's the exploration here, and I don't think anyone has like a perfect idea. So there's still much to discover.
I'm still very big on this idea of multi-mining as well. I think we've lost a little bit of decentralization here. That's what kind of attracted me to Helium being a low power device in everyone's home. I think if we can, because I've started experimenting with other multi-mining things on my hotspots, and there are other projects that could support and earn more than what Helium earns on the hotspots at the moment.
That's impossible. So, sacrilege, Neil. Blasphemy.
Yeah, I know. A great example of that is, and if you want to try the 𝗪𝗵𝘁 firmware. They've got a premium option. You can go install Mist, a VPN on it. Mist pays for 𝗪𝗵𝘁's license fee and more than Helium earns. And suddenly I have a Helium device that will always stay on because I have other sources of revenue and wasted CPU cycles that are now being used. I'm so excited to explore that. Like, yes, data is not here in a way that's paying for the network, but if we can install other projects on here and get along in a good ecosystem, work together, we might have the perfect device that enables lots of things and earns a little bit from all of these projects, you know?
Yes. Yeah. I think there's two aspects to that. There's one where you put multiple, I guess they'd be called virtual miners on one physical thing, right? So you're running the Mist node. Is that what it's called? It's MYST. Yeah.
MYST node. Yeah. They refer to them as nodes. How, you know,
fucking crypto project.
Like the easiest way to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's one where you have one kind of physical thing, whether it's the Raspberry Pi or the Bobcat or the Helium hotspot, and you put multiple nodes on that thing. And then there's another where you have one physical pole and you're putting multiple projects on that pole. So you're putting Helium on there, you're putting GeoNet on there, you're putting WeatherXM on there, you're putting whatever the next thing is down the line. And I think both those things for folks in the space are good avenues to explore. I haven't done a ton of looking into the Mist stuff. Was the Mist what are they called? VPN?
Yeah, it's VPN, yeah.
Okay.
I think there's space for it in a DAO almost, but I think like if not a DAO, then there should be some collaboration between Helium and them because they're just absolutely killing it. You know?
Okay.
I mean, I'm predicted to earn about $30-40 a month, and then the 𝗪𝗶 fee for doing that is about $2.
Oh, nice. Oh, so you just dropped the 𝗪𝗶, what is it? The 𝗪𝗶 firmware onto any hotspot?
Yeah. There's certain ones you can't do it with, but there's a lot you can.
Okay, and I clearly I can do that on the DIY side as well, because you can do anything you want with those.
Yeah, and if their business model is to charge a little bit and really extend what you can do with it, and it more than justifies that $2 cost. But most importantly, that $2 means that I'm going to get firmware updates forever if lots of people do it. And at the moment, a lot of makers have no way of, they've just kind of said that they support it. Yeah, exactly, and we're just seeing them fail. Whereas what they've done is they've enabled other networks that have meant that these devices are worth every penny of the fee. So that's their business model, and it's great to see it. And the whole way they've done it is open source. It's using 𝗚𝗿𝗶𝘀𝘁𝗹𝗲 fleets as well, like Travis just asked. So everything can be forked and run as a separate company. So none of it's just them messing around. They're one of the only makers of an app that works nowadays. But they need something to keep them going, and I think that fee does it, and opening that ecosystem.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if, and I think this is true, that history will show that 𝗪𝗶 has been an extraordinary supporter and contributor to the Helium network. They
just had very bad hotspot design,
yeah, and they had a really bad run starting off.
Their V1 and V2 were horrible, and they had a horrible situation of just delays, and there's still a few people I hear that haven't been given hotspots, but generally their firmware has been spot on from day one. It's like they built a concentrator. It's all open source. If you wanted to go make them, I think if we got mappers, for example, 𝗪𝗶 would be really interested in making those for the network. Pretty cool.
And Aaron has, to his enormous credit, he's showed up at I think all the events I've been to for Helium. And he's like, hey, if you have a problem, come talk to me. He's not like looking to fight. He's just like, hey, all you guys who talk trash on the internet, I'm right here. Like, let's sort this out and get you guys fixed up. So I think that's been super cool to see, because it is super easy on the internet to be like, I'm going to whatever.
But he's still here.
bonds,
He's
whatever the
still doing updates.
Yeah.
Their app is one of the only one that automatically swaps HNT to DC for fees.
Oh,
They're one of the only ones that they're one of the only ones that put that effort in.
Is that
Goes to show
simplicity
the
burn or
difference.
that's something different?
Pretty much. I think it just swaps it. Not sure exactly, but yeah, they're one of the only makers putting in real effort to really grow this thing still. I think they're, trying to redeem themselves as much as possible.
Yeah, crushing. Fred Garner, what's up? I see Liam and Grey Hat are helping Derek out, which is awesome. That's kind of what I like to see. And I think, Neil, funnily enough, you and I started doing this State of the Network thing, I don't know, it must have been over a year ago, right?
Yeah.
And I know a lot of weeks you've been like, dude, I'm just too busy. But I remember when we started, we're like, God, is there going to be enough to talk about? And certainly some weeks it's been kind of light. But it's funny to see like the community that we've gotten to build over in the 𝗪𝗁𝐭𝐞𝐬 server and here on this kind of weekly YouTube thing where folks check in and they're always commenting on your drum set in the back and how they want to hang out at your house. But it's cool to see people helping each other out. So thanks to those watching.
Yeah, it's been real cool. I think like we're starting to see the fruits of our effort. I said it earlier. I think the stars are aligning a little.
Yeah.
I think the technology's caught up. The network's caught up. It's got some real serious potential now. The soul's been through, and we've been bleeding through those little issues that meant it's going to be dragged on. But we knew that was going to happen.
Yeah.
And now we're improving things with hips and focusing on the future and what can be done. And it's great seeing the foundation have a marketing team now. That we're seeing regular updates, we're seeing users of the network, we're seeing 𝗪𝗵𝘁 pop up in the news, and Helium Mobile doing so well. It's so nice to see some real movement on the network, and then we get announcements like Coinbase that just justify it.
Yep.
Not too long ago, we had Binance say this coin's no good, and now we just had Coinbase say, well, this is great, we love this.
Although I don't know, is that what Binance said? I thought that. It seemed to me that their thing was like, hey, you guys are moving to Solana, so we're going to delist it. Like, that's a clear thing, is you're basically getting rid of this thing, so we're going to pull it off.
Yeah. It's hard to say without being Binance, but I think it's where they screwed up with the whole mobile thing and they lost 25 million, wasn't it?
Okay.
So they were just like closing it. But you just have to think of like the overall picture. That was what Binance has said we're delisting, so it can't be that good.
Yeah.
Now we just have validation from Coinbase,
Yep. And I think with these things, it's always important to check out the fundamentals and see if there's like a fundamentally correct thing. And to me, Helium has always, as long as I've known about it, been like a fundamentally correct thing with lots of flaws, lots of mistakes. But the idea that you can have something that incentivizes people to create coverage for this network where the kind of promise of IoT is that it's ubiquitous, it's super cheap, it's easy, like that's where we're going. We're still not there. It took me a week to get those fucking parking sensors working. And those are like commercial products. So, and I think it was mostly my fault that I couldn't get them working, but we're not to the place where it's like push button easy, but we're getting there. So
slowly.
Yeah.
It's not hard work. Like, I'm taking 4 or 5 calls a day, 6 or 7 hours of coding a day. There's 6 or 7 of us doing the same things, 8, 9 of us maybe.
Yeah.
It's growing all the time. We see use cases coming up. People are so interested in tech.
Yeah.
And it's just finally getting to that inflection point, I feel.
Yeah.
The Dutch telecom thing was a huge one. I didn't quite realize it at the time. Like, I thought it was just a roaming partner. But they fully integrate the full LoRaWAN stack for Helium.
Huh.
And they have a hell of a platform. Yeah. It's not just roaming. They've got an LNS server.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. I was laughing because I'm like, oh, they're my competitors now. I'm going up against Deutsche Telekom.
But their services on top look great, and if that introduces Helium to people that are only used to NB-IoT, that's a fantastic thing. Yeah.
And I've got. Have you seen the IoTeX Pebble?
A little.
That thing runs on NB-IoT. If I'm running, it's not a LoRaWAN thing. But interesting.
We're exploring NB-IoT. It's cool. We're exploring NB-IoT as well. It's an interesting tech. Certain use cases LoRa's right for, certain cases it's not, and if we can help, it doesn't matter, does it?
That's what you guys say, right? It's horses for courses.
Horses for courses, yeah.
Let's see. We got Trillion Capital coming in with a bunch of questions. Binance will be the next FTX. Yeah, I don't know. No comment there. What are your thoughts on 𝗚𝗿𝗶𝘀𝐿, competitor to GeoNet? GeoNet's a client of mine. So I think that the guy I've talked to at 𝗚𝗿𝗶𝘀𝐿, super smart guy. I really like talking to him when I've met him in person. super neat dude. I think the 𝗚𝗏𝗏 model is interesting. It's very different than GeoNet. It's using people who are already kind of into the GNSS thing and allowing them to, I think, add their streams or make their streams public. I don't see that being super persuasive, but I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed on that stuff. So maybe they've got something really good. I think GeoNet has got something a lot better, but obviously I'm biased. So, and they're certainly not dumb people. So I think that's the other thing is we think of these things like, oh, one thing has to be good and the other thing has to be bad. As long as projects are doing differently, I kind of want to support everyone. The ones I don't like supporting are the ones that are like, oh, we're going to be just like Helium except better. That just seems like a waste of, like, you're wasting kind of global community energy on that, is my take.
No, I totally agree with you. And I think, like, you know, competition isn't a bad thing. It can help you, spur you on sometimes, and really give you drive to outdo each other. So competition's good. And people see things different ways, and maybe they don't hit for the same reasons with these companies. And you know, boom, there you go.
Yeah.
Both people are now interested in it instead of one being segregated.
Yeah, I think that's a super cool thing is it's just people learning about this stuff. I mean, I think I never would have found Helium if I hadn't got interested in whatever, finding these paragliders and like, oh, what's this LoRaWAN thing, and looking at Meshtastic and then kind of stumbling on Helium at this serendipitous time. And then here I am. So here's an interesting thing, Neil. You see a lot of projects that are looking to use LoRaWAN. Like that's, people are starting to find you when they're looking for LoRaWAN and Helium. They're like, oh, this guy is doing commercial deployments. Like, let's talk to him. Let's use his whatever back end. Is I've got this thing now that then this is like the super hippie side of me. I'm convinced this project is fucking radical. And right now it has nothing to do with Helium. Red Sky or Raccoon, I think, is on here. Nikki. It's this VO2 Max mask. So you can build a VO2 Max device using off-the-shelf parts for about $160. If you're an athlete, if you're any kind of athlete and you've ever been interested in it, VO2 Max is the measure of how much oxygen basically you can burn. And it's a measure of cardiorespiratory kind of performance, right? So Ed Viester is this guy who's climbed a bunch of the 14,000 peaks around the world, super high VO2 Max. I'm sure Lance Armstrong had a high VO2 Max, whether he was on the sauce or not. Like any great cardio athlete has got a really high VO2 Max. If you want to get your VO2 Max tested right now, you would, I mean, Neil, you could go to a local, it won't be a gym, it'll be like a lab in your area. They'll walk you into a room with a $60,000 machine. You'll get in a treadmill, and then you work out to exhaustion with a mask on that's got this giant hose that goes to this fancy machine, and it measures where you are. This thing, like I said, is $160 to build, and you wear the whole thing on your face. It's a pretty small little device. And so right now there's no connection to Helium. It's just on an ESP32. It connects to it sends the data via Wi-Fi or Bluetooth to your phone. There's a little app for it. And I see there's potentially this connection to run the thing off of Helium so that if I'm running in the mountains with this probably fairly uncomfortable mask on, I can see over the course of like a 12-mile hike what my ability to burn oxygen was like. And I think I've got this gut feeling that this is the way to go, but I don't have like a clear direction on exactly like what it's going to result in. And I think that's the cool part of where we are right now, kind of circling back to your seaweed thing, is you never know how people are going to use this thing.
No, exactly.
So that's
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I like, I've just sent you a link. Maybe you should check it out from TechTelic. They got a e-doctor device that straps to your chest and can tell the breathing rate, your body temperature, and things like that. I think for pro athletes, that kind of stuff's like a gold mine of information, right? Yep. So LoRaWAN would enable something like that to just work in the wild. You could go on a run and be trace the whole way through it. So Wi-Fi, maybe Bluetooth, depends if there's some devices around.
Yep.
But generally, LoRa, it would work for. And I think that is a huge avenue to go down. But yeah, like you say, like you never know when the tech's going to go. You can walk in with one idea of the business and then they'll say, well, this is what I need out of it. And then it's like, oh, well, you actually need, but it's going on that journey with them.
Yep. Totally. I think it's really important to investigate this stuff. And there's so many opportunities now. So this, to be super clear, this idea wasn't mine. I stumbled on it looking around on the internet for some new project to build. Found this person who's done a ton of these. They're on Instructable. And I guess all of the information is there, but super dense, really difficult to kind of wade through. And then someone made improvements, and those improvements never got kind of incorporate in a way that made it easier to understand. So I'm like, fuck it, I'm just going to build this thing on the Medio Scientific GitHub and make it like ultra easy to do. And I hired the same guy who did the 3D design for the soil moisture sensor, that like cool little white thing. I was like, hey man,
cool.
I need help with this mask. I want to make it a lot better. And I was just talking this morning to a fluid dynamics guy, because the inside of the mask has to be set up in this certain way. And Lee has been asking me, she's like, is this thing like, is it for helium? I'm like, no, there is no purpose right now. Like there's no clear path to profitability that I see. Like it's just a super fun project. But I think we're in that place, Neil, and to your point about the Tiktaalik thing, where this kind of, I don't know, research, investigation, and learning is going to pay off hugely in the next couple months or years, where it's like, oh yeah, you've already done that thing. We're going to see something that, you know, whatever, staples to your chest or whatever the easy way to do it is, where it's like, yeah, when you go on a long run or a long swim or a long row or whatever it is you do, you sail, there's going to be start to be like these biometric markers. And LoRaWAN is probably going to be the best way to see that in the wild. And so we're going to start seeing people like, 𝗱𝗲𝐬𝐬, like these great endurance athletes wearing these things that are easy to make, that are cheap, that anyone can make anywhere. And I think we're going to start to gather data on kind of human performance in a way that hasn't been done before. And helium will probably be part of that.
Yeah. Like I always say all the time, I think helium is the sensor layer to AI. AI can start predicting data and looking at data and dealing with big data sets to solve big problems. But it can't just do that without gathering data. And these sensors can be that system eventually. Like I always say, like a temperature sensor is cool, but having a temperature sensor that adjusts the temperature to optimize for growth and things like that is where the killer is. And that's the layer that helium provides for me.
Yeah, I was thinking about this last night, because here in San Diego, it's getting hot. We're going into our quote hot season. Certainly not like the rest of America. But we've got, we live in a 1923 Spanish style house, tiny little house. And it's got these ceiling fans that are super janky. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to replace these fans this year. But I was thinking, man, I need to put a sensor on these fans so they basically, I coordinate how fast they spin and whether or not they're on with how hot it is, and take the temperature down at kind of whatever chest level and ceiling level, and build some, minor algorithm. It's like, keep my house cool using the outdoor, air.
Exactly. And you could look at how long does it take to get down to temperature, and if I leave the window open, does it fly past what it should, I want it at, and I should have closed it earlier, and you can just kind of like deal with this data on the fly. I think that'd be really cool to do, and I think it just needs exploration. I think a big thing we're seeing is we're one of the only companies talking about this on the scale that we're talking about it a lot of the time.
It's crazy, right?
And that's what I mean. Like, just saying that you put a project together that opens an air vent or turns on a fan and controls a thing is more marketing material than's out there at the moment. We get some pretty nice pictures of what a smart city should be or what a smart building should be, but the real thing is going through how to install that one sensor. Like, what is the path to doing it? How do you do it? And kind of like talk about how it's done so people are aware of this stuff. Like I say, that those parking sensors have existed for a while, but we haven't really seen them on any scale. But if you spin up a video about it, do a blog post about it, maybe go on a few webinars, suddenly you'll get investment calls.
It's crazy,
that want to put this live.
No, I'm fairly sure that's what's going to happen with this VO2 Max mask thing. I reached out to so there's another company. Here's the contrast. Is it's $160 in off the shelf parts. If you wanted to buy one right now that is a better design but the same thing, and I don't think like a huge difference in accuracy, $5,800 US, so just under $6,000. And I just think so. I reached out to a researcher who had done like an experiment on that. And said, hey, have you worked with any DIY masks? He's like, no, I didn't know they exist. It's like, oh, they're $160 off the shelf. And he wrote back, he's like, dude, that's fucking crazy. Like how much cheaper that is. And I think that's the super cool thing that we're all investigating and enabling. And hopefully the folks, watching these weeklies are inspired to go and figure out like their own thing. Like find the thing that you like to do anyway. Like I like athletic crap and just do that and see how helium can support it, incorporate it, whatever. And I think you have a much better chance of, building a little business or whatever it is that you want to do than I don't know, by watching TV and eating chips.
Yeah.
So, oh, there's your favorite, Rob Putt. $5,800 for this mask, Rob. That is a thing that measures how cardiorespiratorily healthy you are. But you can build a thing for under $200. So here's Rob. Here we go. And luckily, we're coming up on time. So before he drops more F-bombs than I can.
No, but I think, if you remember back to Helium London, Rob's slides were going on about how sensors are so expensive right now to do the things. Like, I'm always reminded that the councils in the UK, the units that do the air quality monitoring are £1 million each.
And a council is like a little neighborhood, is that right?
Yeah, like a I don't know, state almost.
Like a village, is it? Yeah.
There's like regional boundaries that they'll do a whole area, and they'll one pick where these air quality things are reading the meters, and two, they're like £1 million each. So, for a lot less, we could put almost like a mesh network of these things out there, and have real readings, whereas we wouldn't have to trust them and stuff like that. And I think like there's so many cost efficiencies to be had with the Helium network. It's just that no one's going like, hey, look at me, I could do this solution for you.
Yeah. And I think, this will maybe ruffle some feathers because not everybody has $1,000. But the crazy thing to me is that if you do have $1,000, you can build something that's comparable to like $1 million deployment on the commercial level. And you'll have to hack it a little bit. You'll have to DIY. You'll have to get up on a ladder. You have to solder some shit. But it's 100x or 10x improvement? I think it's 100x improvement on the cost side. Like, you could build something you can turn around and sell to a city, right? I think even with these parking sensors, if I kind of get it right, it's like, all right, well, I spent $600 to get these things over, and I put it in myself, and I took a risk that the city is going to, come knocking on my door and charge me some amount to pull them back out. But at the same time, it's equally likely they're like, holy shit, you've got data. So I think I'd come to them in 2 months and be like, hey, you guys have missed issuing 97 tickets. Those 97 parking tickets are, $52 each. So you could have paid for these and deploy these right now, and also made your traffic meters way more efficient. Like, so you could put a tracker on the tracking meter. So like, oh, you're stopping and getting coffee an awful lot. Like the thing in America is cops and donuts. And I love cops. I just like giving them a hard time about eating donuts. Like, the fuck are you doing outside of the donut shop for 30 minutes? Like, you should be driving around. Same thing with the traffic meters is like, hey, if I can just tell you where the violators are and you go straight there and issue a ticket, that's great for the city. It's great for small businesses like mine. It's like, no, if some jackwagon parks in front of us and blocks up a spot and we lose one sale a day, $60 a day, say, for 30 days, that's a lot of money.
It matters. It matters in the long run. And, doing the little thing like you're saying with the busy light, that there's a space around the back and can negate that, and for very little cost. In the long run, so there's some capex, some initial expenditure, but OPEX is not much, and it just means that you get less lost opportunities. Before
we wind up, I would be remiss if I didn't say smash the like button, the subscribe button, tell your buddies about this, all that stuff. I don't know if I put any links down in the description, so maybe none of what we talked about is followable today. Rob is asking if we talked about his and Neil's new bit of awesome engineering. No, is that still top secret?
No, it's not top secret. It's just very, very new. So we'll do some blog posts about it soon.
Okay, cool. And if you want to talk about it next week on the State of the Network, or if you want to run anything in between, let me know. But yeah, I know you guys are always working on some super cool. Oh, someone wants to. Rob's saying we should license his new magic storage. Okay. I love it. Love it. All right, dude. I think that wraps it up. Plenty to talk about today. So. Fucking A. Good to see you. I'm psyched for all of your under wraps news to become over wraps.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah. There's a bunch of stuff coming. I'm so pumped to see kind of what this would like when you release this thing, because I've seen a little bit on the backside is like, oh my God, that's a game changer, dude. And you're part of it. So something to be proud of.
Thanks. Yeah. Trying real hard.
Yep. Shit. Yeah. That's what it takes. All right, buddy. I will catch you guys next week. I'll catch everyone watching next week. If you got anything in the meantime, check out the 𝗪𝗁𝐾𝐬 server. If you want to see that VO2 Max thing, when you come into the server, just say, hey, put me on the VO2 Max channel, and I will figure that out and add you in there so you can see and watch that whole thing. Cool. All right, Neil. We're out.